me a little feedback in the messaging channel on Discuss.
Okay.
And maybe participate in the cooperative spreadsheet of Teams.
Yeah. That's on my list. Sorry, I've just been really focused on getting Casper moving now. That's the next piece of the puzzle, and we're making great progress. So
you guys know what we're recording right now.
We are? That's what I was checking.
Yep.
All right. So here we go. Let's convene this meeting.
I think it's okay. It's just 2 p.m. now.
All right. Okay. So we have a lot to get through. We had a really nice dev stand-up just at the top of 10 o'clock. Thanks, Jacob, for joining as a fly on the wall. I appreciate that. It's always good to have community members who want to engage. Adam, how do we know you?
I'm a member of the S7 Foundation, formerly known as NUMAT. So we're currently in the process of updating our website, but our old, now rather out-of-date website can be found at numat.info. And our mission statement is bringing synergistic co-creation to the scale.
Okay.
And we are inspired by the work of futurist Barbara Marx Hubbard. And we see ourselves as basically trying to practically implement her vision. And the unique offering that we're trying to bring to the field is designing social architecture and processes for facilitating co-creation across organizational boundaries.
Nice. And how did you find Rchain?
Really through Jim. I wanted to join the social ledger call, and then Ian just invited me to hop onto this meeting as well and learn what you guys are up to.
Very good. Okay. Well, please take a look at rchain.coop as an introduction. Rchain is developing a scalable blockchain as a public utility.
Right.
So the membership owns and controls the chain.
Right. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So as people know, we had a developer retreat last week. A lot of good stuff came out of that. Hoping to have a very nice presentation out of the video, delivered from the video on how you code all the way from sort of lowest level cell contracts up to accounts, so people can see for themselves exactly how our model differs from UTXO in respect to how we prevent double spend, how the consensus algorithm is related to that. So all of that should be online soon.
Yeah, just to comment on that, Greg, all the videos are now uploaded to the Rchain YouTube channel unlisted.
Okay.
The reason why they're not published is because I don't have the retreat schedule. So I can't go back and say on day 1, part 1, this is who's talking. Day 2, part 2, so forth and so on. So as soon as I get the updated, those are all ready to get published. So they're pretty much ready to go.
Very, very good. That's very good news. So
Christian, I can give you those. I have that. So let's talk after this meeting.
In fact, why don't Meta, if you want to give an update?
Sure.
Very good.
Awesome. So we had, as Greg mentioned, we had our excellent developer retreat last week. And as a result of a lot of the consensus that was reached, the development team is spending the balance of this week to document and kind of tie off all of the open questions that we went into the retreat with. If there are new questions that have come up as a result of that, we're documenting that. So just a lot of energy being spent on writing down what it is we understand, collaborating around those documents, and then coming up with our plan, our go-forward plan with respects to Sprint 6 and how we get to Mercury. So really important that we write everything down so we can capture all the great discussions and understandings that came from it, as well as the artifacts. So we're going to see more documents hitting the wiki and GitHub as a result of the work.
Absolutely. That's really great. Any other updates you want to give about that or other things?
Sure. So I can also, happy to share that our development wiki and developer tickets are all publicly accessible now to membership. So actually to the public, everyone can see the documentation that's being created. I'm happy to post to the channel some good landing pages that will kind of give you a great funnel into our documentation repository, and looking forward to hearing feedback. You can catch me on Discord.
Very good. That is just great news.
Yes. Very happy to share it. So look
Sweet.
for that in the general channel is where you'll see it. In the general channel is where I'll post it on the Rchain Discord.
Very good. That is so awesome. And it looks based on the developer retreat. I just want to say I've been so pleased with the personnel, Pyrofex, and in particular Mike and Nash and the team have really been sort of combing through all of the applicants who want to work on the development team, and the new hires are just outstanding, really stellar. I strongly recommend their work already. In particular, Michael Birch absorbed Vlad's Casper in just a few days and has done a really, really excellent write-up of his understanding. So I'm going to encourage community members who want to dig in to take a look at Michael Birch's write-up. So I'm very, very pleased with how the team is rounding out, and I'm looking forward to just great things coming out of these folks. So that's just kudos to you, Meta, and everybody for making such a solid team.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so did you have any further updates?
That's it for me right now. So I look forward to feedback on the wiki and any Jira tickets.
Yeah, cool. So a few other things. There's some developments in the works that I want the community to understand. So we are looking to support Pyrofex in their work to build out a set of developer tools. And so the co-op is considering an investment essentially in Pyrofex. And this is both co-op and holdings are considering an investment in Pyrofex. The details will be coming out in the next week or so, but I want the community to be aware that this has been underway since July of this year, and now we're finally getting to the point where we're solidifying that relationship. It's also a part of making sure that there's structural and fiscal reinforcement between these two organizations. In particular, something like 80%, 90% of the developers working on Rchain are actually working via Pyrofex. And so we want to make sure that there's a good, solid reinforcement of a good working relationship between Pyrofex and the co-op. And this is part of the way we want to do that. And this is, in general, part of our strategy for remaining committed to decentralization. So this is a way in which we can build out a network of decentralized organizations that all support each other and work with each other to achieve ends. But again, I want to make sure that the community is aware of that and that they have their say and speak their mind with respect to how we proceed here. So there's not
just a point to that. All of the majority of the developers on that Pyrofex has hired are contractors, and we have told Rchain that if they ever want to hire these developers directly, they are welcome to. So it's not like we're getting a monopoly on the developer talent. We're simply providing this as a service to Rchain, that we're handling all of the paychecks and billing and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on one second. I want to respond. All right, sorry. My son was just heading out the door. I wanted to say goodbye. Yeah, so that's true. But what the thing that I'm trying to make sure is that we have a coherent team, and the last thing you want is a lot of organizational mishigash that doesn't support team formation. And one of the things that we were supporting as much as we could during the developers retreat was exactly that team formation. So we're trying to provide the kind of organizational structure that supports that, but also lays a groundwork for what I hope is a very healthy, decentralized ecosystem of organizations and people who are working towards a common set of interests. So if as we get more details on this arrangement, we will definitely let the community know. So look forward to some documentation there, and we'll definitely make sure that the membership is fully apprised of all the details and has their say with respect to this. Let me stop there and check and see if there's. So we covered a lot of ground. Let me stop there and check and see if there's any questions that people want to ask at this point.
Yeah, would it be an investment of ROC, of US dollar? Would it be similar to the co-op's deal with holdings, for example? Do you have any color?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely will be, majority of the investment will be in the form of token, ROC, but there may be some liquid assets, but until we have the details on the table, I can't really speak to that. But yeah, largely it's about making sure that there are stakeholders within the development community in the project, right? That's what we're trying to make sure is the case.
Yeah, there needs to be some liquid portion because we have to be able to pay our developers, but the vast majority will be ROC.
Cool, that's a great question. Any other questions from other folks? On anything, it doesn't just have to be the developments with Pyrofex. It could be anything, developers retreat, anything at all. Cool. All right. So, Ian, did you want to say something?
Well, I think people would like to hear some of the highlights maybe from the retreat.
Oh, for sure. Well, do you want to say some? So what were some highlights for you?
Well, for me, just seeing these people face to face. I mean, the development team is scattered around the world. We had people flying in from everywhere, even from Germany. And working on these decentralized projects, there's no substitute for meeting in the flesh. And the productivity that I saw during this retreat was amazing. Every day was just full of sessions and breakouts, and even during the downtime, like during lunch, there was always a crowd around at least one whiteboard discussing something or another. So it was a fantastic experience, and enough brain candy to I think to keep me engaged for another lifetime or two.
That's great. That's really good. Anyone else want to share some highlights from the developers retreat? Navneet? Mike?
For me, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, again, just meeting people was excellent. Getting to know their faces. So often we leave our cameras off, but the technical abilities of this team always astound me. I've counted myself blessed to have a close relationship with Greg, but many of these other people are also technically brilliant and surprise me at how quickly they pick things up and the quality of their code and their suggestions. I'm really looking forward to the next few months as we execute on all the stuff we talked about at the retreat.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, I agree with all of that, and Ian also with what you said. For me, one of the highlights of the retreat, Mike, was when you drew the architecture diagram that was in a very developer-centric, precise way. It wasn't the kind of architecture diagram that I might draw. And I posted that on the developer channel. That helped a tremendous amount. The discussions around Casper and the concept of political capital, the ease at which eventually multiple staking tokens can be created, were all pretty breakthroughs for me to understand how that fit together. Even being close to the topics over the last year it was really helpful to see that gel a little bit more. There's still some challenges, of course, in the conceptual area. One is with namespaces. There was a lot of confusion among the developers about how they would take the concept of namespaces and apply it in code, and so there's more work to do in that area. But with the exception of that, I didn't hear a large number of open, high-level conceptual issues. So it was really nice to see people gelling across the dev team and grokking what we're building.
I want to highlight a couple of more things. Not only the developer portion, I think. Other part of the team which primarily focus on marketing and sort of sales or evangelizing Rchain in general, the coordination between that team and the development team was amazing. What I feel that the way we coordinated effort in terms of how we're going to take it to the market, I think we need a little bit more work on that area, but at least we started in the retreat, even though the retreat was much more focused for the developers. And especially from the developer side, I find it's amazing, the energy between, or the synergy between different developers, the discussions among them. They're pretty high caliber discussions, and I think they have, the way I feel, they have sorted out a lot of things which you can't sort out when you're doing Skype or in a chat. In person, you can see the expressions, how they're doing and how they feel about each other. I think that energy was really, really high. And some of the discussions were pretty amazing, world-class discussion, of course. I think, we will find out the documentation. I think Matt already mentioned that this team is going to do. I think you guys, I'm not sure if it's going to be publicly available, everything, but what you see, you can see the direction co-op is heading towards. It definitely points a pretty open transparency. I mean, the way Greg was describing most of the discussions, they are already on YouTube. You can see the topics also. I think we captured most of the major topics within this retreat, including Casper, namespace, other language, primarily Rolang. I think we had few discussions on Rolang in general. And I think that there was a consensus among how they're gonna take Erlang to the next level. That was pretty interesting for me. That's all, I guess.
One thing I wanted to say about, first of all, thanks to everyone for their highlights. Those all resonated with me. One moment that really stood out was when Meta was talking about community and just the importance of being vulnerable. I think that was a real highlight moment, and sort of the discussion around there, because we are going to make mistakes. We are going to and the mistakes make us better, and so this idea of being vulnerable while still executing and doing the best we can was a really standout moment for me. Another standout moment was my wife Natasha was there, and she and her friend Lilka. Lilka is a banker in New York who also came to learn more about blockchain, and they suggested that Christian host DJ some stuff on the very last night. And so many of the team members came and danced, and I was really excited to see that happen. I thought that was most excellent. So there was the human side as well as the technical brilliance, and that was very satisfying for me. Great. So I really want to encourage people to look at the videos from the developer retreat and to look at some of the write-ups. Let's see if let me know if this is not accessible. I'm going to paste the link right now. Hang on a second. Here we go. Please take a look at this for any of you who are interested in Casper. Yeah, so let me know if that is not accessible to anyone. And Jacob has seen me present this now at the developer stand-up. I want to take some time to walk some people through sort of the relationship between the pictures that Vlad is drawing and the kind of simulations that Vlad is drawing, and how that corresponds to an algebra which maps directly onto Rchain, so that people can see exactly what we mean when we say correct by construction, but also to shore up some of the intuitions that people might be having about either how Rchain works or how Casper works, because they fit together in a relatively nice way, which has been the thesis from the beginning. So I'm going to turn to that, unless there are any other comments, questions, or concerns that we want to have. Is Lisa on? Because at some point we do need an update on the financials. And, yes, Lisa is here. Maybe so.
Yeah. Yes. How about I tackle that next Wednesday? So,
okay.
Oh.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do it. We can do it next Wednesday. That's totally fine. Absolutely.
Okay.
Great. So if we're not going to do a financials update, then I will go straight into a quick discussion of how we map a lot of the Casper intuitions onto pictures, and how those pictures map onto algebra. And this is very selfish of me, because this is just how I need to think. I'm very much a fan of doing things at the juncture of at least two different ways of conceptualizing. So I'll quickly do that. All right, and let's see if people confirm that they can see my screen.
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Christian. So as I said, I love work that's right at the juncture of two different ways of, or two different kinds of intuition. So algebraic geometry, I think, and algebraic topology are both wonderful wonderful disciplines. So I'm calling this algebraic chainometry because the chain isn't quite geometric, it's more topological. So let me just walk people through this. I think a lot of people are familiar with this idea of a blockchain. So inside the blocks are some updates of a ledger, let's say. And really what that is some keys and some values. So at a particular key, say x1, we observe a value, say y1, and that's the case all the way out to xn for yn. So here's our little ledger, right? And that's what should show up in the block. And in point of fact, for the row length semantics and the interpretation with respect to execution, we treat this as exactly a transactional boundary. So when we get past this boundary, so we get inside this scope, the next piece of the ledger is really the child block, because this block has seen these values, right? And so this nesting of scopes corresponds to the parent-child relationship on the chain. And this is the case, sort of ad infinitum. And so the question is, can we kind of represent this ad infinitum without having to unroll the loop infinitely? And fortunately for us, the algebra is on our side. So I can write down a little recursive equation where here's my block, and then I recurse and go and get the next block, and recurse and go and get the next block, and recurse. And this little equation has two different interpretations. One interpretation is I can express it, I can interpret it as a kind of fixed point equation for a certain kind of structure. What kind of structure? Well, this kind of structure, the structure that we've been drawing as chains. But the other way I get to interpret this kind of equation is as a recursive specification for the behavior of an agent. And what kind of agent? Well, an agent written in the row calculus or an agent written in row lang. So there's this nice thing going on, which is that there's a one-to-one correspondence between the sort of pictures that we think of when we think of blockchains and the kinds of specifications that we get when we talk about row lang contracts. That's a good sign, and it's really helpful for me because it helps me, have this nice finite notation for these fairly large and potentially infinitary or at least unbounded structures. All right, so that's really important for me because I like to be able to reason both pictorially and algebraically. And the correspondence is even further because now I can get, and this should be familiar to anyone who's been looking at Vlad's work. Now I can get, chains for each validator, right? And that corresponds algebraically exactly to being able to just put each of these agents in parallel composition. So all the agents are running simultaneously. And it's nice that the row calculus and row lang have this par operator, which allows me to put these chains in parallel composition, right? So I can lay them side by side in this way. So again, there's a nice lineup between the diagrams and the algebra. That's important. Now, if we lean a little bit more on the agency side, and I want to make a shout out to Michael Birch, who pointed this out as well. I've been pointing this out to Vlad for a couple of years now, which is that Vlad's write-up of his work on consensus on Casper is almost devoid of agency. So he's looking at it from the point of view of what structure is necessary, and that's important when we're talking about security. And the reason that's the case is because we can't necessarily trust that an agent out there in the wild woolly internet is actually going to conform to a specification like that, right? So that becomes harder to check. And so if you want to reason about security, you typically want to reason about the structure rather than the agency. So that makes a lot of sense. The cost of that kind of choice when reasoning is that structure without agency has a much higher complexity profile. And there are lots of examples of this that I've given over the years, so I won't go into that now. But just suffice it to say that if you don't have an explicit representation of agency, then complexity becomes really quite a bugaboo, and that's why this pun between agency and structure is so important, right? Because here we get to interpret this either as structure or as the specification of an agent. If we lean a little bit more on the side of agency, what we're really saying is, having received the values of the ledger, then we log a block. So that's what this little line here in the agent specification says. It's just simply writing the block down, having received the values. And of course, we can roll that back up into a recursive equation. So here we've got this unrolled all the way out to the crack of doom. And here we roll it up into a nice recursive equation, which is finitely presentable. And we can reason about it in a fairly compact way. And that allows us to look much more deeply into the picture, to make our pictures of reality correspond to our programs. So here, the picture of reality is we've got a validator that is servicing potentially many clients. As the clients provide values that are associated with the block is logged to the chain, right? And that's exactly what this little piece of code does here. And here, all of the clients are represented nicely as a part of the algebraic expression of the picture. So the most important point here is, here's the picture. This corresponds to our intuitions about the communication flow. And notice that the algebra is perfectly in alignment with the picture and without exploding in complexity, right? So I've kept the algebraic expressions to a very tiny square on this page, right? The most of the information or most of the surface area of the picture is in the diagram, but the algebra corresponds to the diagram in a one-for-one way. We can go even further. We can observe that at least with respect to logging blocks, what we very much like to do is to only log blocks if the values in the ledger satisfy certain conditions. For example, no double spend. That would be a nice condition to have before we log the blocks. But we could do other things. So, for example, it might satisfy something as relates to the safety condition that Vlad considers. So here we don't pass through the transactional boundary until we've satisfied a condition. Again, the algebra corresponds nicely to the intuitions. And so the next step then is, how does that relate when we want these different views of the chain to interact? Right? So in other words, how does one validator communicate to another validator? So far, our picture has been, these are isolated silos, and now we want the silos to be connected. And that was in fact my sneaky motivation for introducing the logging operation. So the logging operation is where we're writing to storage. And here is where we're communicating that same block to other validators. So now you can actually see the arising of the different architectural components of Rchain. So here's the storage layer, right, logging this block to the storage. And here's the comms layer communicating with the other validators the block that we have received. Right? So already the algebra is lining up with the architectural components that we've along which we have decomposed the development effort. Now, of course, if validators are sending blocks to each other, then we need to modify this code to also receive blocks. So that's what this select is. So either I'm picking up new values on the ledger or the key value store from client sources, or I'm picking them up from validator sources. Right? So that's the key difference between these two different cases. And that also distinguishes kind of ontologically clients from validators, right? So in some sense, the clients have the right to propose changes that have no justifications. The justification is they're interacting with some application, which is the state of which is now going to be updated, whether it's a wallet or some other kind of application like a music sharing application or a social network application. So their justifications are their business concerns, but there's not necessarily a justification in terms of how the values in the ledger or the key value store are being updated. When interacting with the validators, the justifications at a minimum have to come because they are packages of client transactions, but they might also be because I heard it. This validator heard it from another validator who heard it from another validator. So that's the kind of justification. And that's effectively what we're saying in this slide here is that's the difference. The block that we receive has to decompose into potentially some estimate of the values in the ledger together with justifications for why that estimate is the case. And then if it passes muster, if it passes some condition, then we can take certain actions, which is just an elaboration in some sense of this particular case. And then when we go further to the kind of argument about political capital, that's where we modify again the algebra just a little bit to be able to distinguish between the shapes of the different kinds of block messages that come in, right? So there can be a propose message or a promote message or a join message, and in each of these different cases, that's going to impact the interpretation of this arrow here. So that's where I'll stop for today. It's a lot of information to take in, but the main point is just that step by step we're refining the pictorial intuition into an algebraic specification, and the two work side by side. So the pictorial representation of our intuitions as to how consensus has to happen is useful, but it lacks certain ways of being able to reason about and reduce to code what we want. And then the algebra gives us this other perspective on how to reduce to code. And the nice thing is that they coincide in a fairly succinct way, which allows us to make sure that we are in fact writing code that matches our intuitions, and that our intuitions are not nonsense because there's some code that we can run to check them. So that's why I need both pictures and formulae. So I'll stop there and check in and see if people have understood what we've said so far.
Wonderful, Greg. Wonderful.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Any other more detailed thoughts? All right.
It looks like you've done an Rchain with one page of code.
Casper. No, there's a lot more to it, but essentially what I'm trying to do is to, in a step-by-step fashion, get to a place where everyone can see, how the code relates to what we all agree is a good consensus algorithm.
It puts us on the same page.
It puts us all on the same page. That's exactly the idea. That's precisely it. Right? And it also allows us to poke holes in it, right? So when we're all on the same page, we can now use our common intuitions to say, wait a minute, what about this? What about this? What about this? Right. So Good. Well, that's, I think, all I got for today, and unless there's anything else from the community. Oh, I do have one more thing, but Jim, you were about to say something?
Well, I know we had a governance meeting scheduled tomorrow. It's Thanksgiving, so I don't know that anybody's going to show up. But we have an initial list of governance committee meetings, which everyone should take a look at and make suggestions, whatever. That was our first task, was to decide the membership. And there's Discord channels for the other two committees as well. This is our cooperative. Let's make it happen. Let's get involved.
Very good. Absolutely. I want to mention that the reason I missed the Casper Hangout this Monday was because I was invited to speak with a group it turns out it's global in span. I thought they were largely focused in Scotland, but no, they span the globe. And their focus is transformative technologies. So they were just becoming aware of the blockchain as a part of transformational technologies, and so I engaged with them, and they were quite happy with this sort of engagement they got from Rchain. So it looks like we may be we may be forging a relationship with this group. And I got that group, the contact with that group, through Third Horizon University. And so I'm hoping very much also to forge a relationship between Rchain and Third Horizon University. I think we want to make contact with new forms of educational institutions, especially educational institutions that are amenable to taking on more of a using the blockchain infrastructure as a part of their foundation. Third Horizon University is one such organization. I don't want to preclude engagements with Harvard or Caltech or MIT, but they already have a kind of established brick and mortar style presence. And I think one of the things we really want to support is this emerging class of educational institutions that is much more fluid in their physical structure and has a sort of strong and profound online structure and relationships with their faculty, students, and other kinds of staff. So that was one piece of the puzzle. That was why I wasn't there on Monday. It's because I was speaking with a group that Third Horizon University had introduced me to. But we'll be back speaking on Casper Stand Up next Monday. Cool. Ian?
Yeah, I'm just anticipating some of the questions that will come from the release of all of our Dev Retreat videos. And seeing that Mercury is so many months out, I think people will be pretty excited about some of the releases that we have planned in the near future. So is there anything we can say about storage layer and that release?
Yeah, Meta, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, absolutely. So we have intentions of putting together some releases for the community. I think Griff has a lot more clarity on some of the core requirements for the storage layer. He has built the query unification piece, and that's all in GitHub. So what we're going to be focusing now is a packaging and documentation and getting it ready for general release. So it is our intention to release the storage layer. It's also our intention to release something that the community can play with on the communications side. And it is also our intention, hopefully, to get the C++ Rosette the compiler and some flavor of Rolang packaged up nicely so people can use that in meetups to have a delightful experience to create contracts in Rolang and run them on the Rosette C++ machine. So I don't know if that's too ambitious, but that's what I'm aiming for.
That is awesome news. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes. So I'm working with the team to get that done. So we've actually, I didn't mention that we've got some tickets out there with bounties on them. So if there are developers that want to get involved, we are in a place now where we're starting to expose some of the bounty type work to the development community. And I've been working with HJ on getting that all set up. So that is available now. The bounty tickets are available on the core landing page, which I've already shared on the general channel.
Bravo. That's really, really good news.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think that's like one of the best notes we could possibly end on. So for those of you who are celebrating Thanksgiving, have a happy Thanksgiving, and looking forward to seeing everyone next week.
Terrific. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.